Our presenter today, Julia, is one of our outside consultants specializing in bookkeeping and accounting needs for the interior designers. Julia is based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Good morning, Julia, or good afternoon to you. I'm going to switch the screen now over to yours. How are you doing? Can you hear me, Julia?
Oh, hi. Hi. I can hear you.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
All right. I can hear you well. Thank you. I'm going to switch it over to your screen now.
Okay. Just let me know when you could see me, when you could see the screen.
I can see you now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. It's Friday. A couple of questions have already come in asking about the recording. And actually, the recording will be sent out to you in an email if you registered for the webinar as soon as it is available. And then it will also be part of your support screen in 2.0 when you log in. All of the previous recordings for the webinars are posted on there as well. So today we're going to be talking about bank imports. So bank imports can be used for both your cash accounts and your credit card accounts, and they will look a little bit different. So my goal is to cover both of those and also then leave about a half hour towards the end for questions. As Sarah had said, please use your dialog box to ask the questions. I will read them off to you. If I do have additional questions or if your questions isn't clear, I can unmute you and then you and I can have a dialogue about the question as well. Okay, so as a friendly reminder, and for those of you who have attended my webinars before, I like to work in Studio in more than one tab. So for example, I typically always have the General Ledger tab open, which is an accounting function. If I'm looking to look something up in the item screen, I would go to Projects, Items, right-click, Open Link in New tab. And so here I am. To me, it's a lot easier to toggle between the two that way. So today, let's start with mapping. Once you map your activity, once you map the format, you will then have to use that same format every single time you import any files for your credit cards and or your bank activity. So let's go to accounting and let's go to the bank import mapping. So bank import mapping does need to be completed prior to this little box that says bank import. If you do not have the mapping function set up, you will be required to do that before you could actually import any of the activity. So as you can see in here, I've mapped activity for the Chase Business Checking and Chase Visa. So we will actually map an account as well, but let's just take a look at this screen. So this is, and you could, for example, if you decided that the way your Excel was populating, like the way you were downloading, so actually let's back up. All of your activity for the import needs to be imported through a CSV file or an Excel file, and you would obviously retrieve that information from your financial institution. So for example, if it was American Express, you would go into American Express, select your date range, and export the information. If this is a Chase, right, you would go into Chase, log in, export your information. This is a different function than reconciliations. We did talk about reconciliations in the previous webinar, and you should do your bank imports first and then your reconciliation second. Reconciliations are a check tool to make sure that everything that you imported was accurate and posted and there weren't any discrepancies. So let's actually just Chase Visa, Chase Business. So let's just delete this one and say, oh, we've never done that before. So here I am, and I'm going to begin my mapping because I need to import some bank activity. So it's asking me for a sample file right here. So you're about to start the bank CSV import mapping. You need to make sure, like I said to you, right, in the beginning, let's see. You need to make sure that you have a file that you'd like to use. And that, again, this is the same format that you'll be using moving forward. This is my date, this is my check number, this is my description, and this is obviously my amount, my dollar value. We'll talk about the importance of check numbers down the road. Again, for those of you who've listened to my webinars, I preach about them constantly. But it is asking me to start with a file. So I'm going to select my file. Here it is. And then it's saying, okay, well here I recognize that there's all these columns, but what would you like me to do with them, right? Step number 2, though, is select the account into which the transaction should be imported. So this will be, in theory, your asset accounts or your cash accounts, or your credit card accounts, and those are your liability accounts. Then it's asking you to select the vendor, and this is the bank name. So in this case, it's Chase. Obviously, if you were mapping to an American Express, this would be American Express. And then it's asking, or it's actually giving you the option of, or asking you the option of, are the amounts in your spreadsheet positive or negative? So let's look at, so in this particular spreadsheet, these amounts are positives for charges and a negative for either a refund or a payment. So this is actually really important. And it will depend on your financial institution and how you pull the information from your financial institution. Is it pulling into a CSV file as a positive or a negative? If it's pulling in as a negative, you would need to select this box to tell the system that even though your numbers are coming in as a negative, you want the system to make sure that it's posting to the correct debit or credit. And we'll talk more about that in the next screen, and I can show you how to double check that as well. So in my scenario, right, so there are positives, so I don't need to do anything with that. So then, right, we go back to our columns. So what is column A? Obviously, it's a date. Here's my, right, everything has a title. I like everything personally to have a title. This is my check date. That's my format. It has a 4-digit year. My check number, my description, my amount, and ignore and ignore. Everything looks correct. I'm going to click Save. So now I'm ready to do a test and make sure that I can import activity into my Chase Business Checking. In this scenario, this is my operating account. And I'd go back into accounting and go into bank import. So I actually have some information that I imported earlier, but let's say I imported it wrong or it came over with wrong dates or something like that. So I'm going to say to Studio that I want to import new ones. So we have more than one. Oh, we have a citizens. Okay. So I deleted everything that was in there. Let's just assume that, right, everything came over incorrectly. So my mapping is set up. Again. You need to make sure that the mapping you set up is going to match the spreadsheet that you're using to import. Okay. So I'm going to go to import. It's asking me what am I going to do? I'm mapping it to my Chase business. I want to select my file. Here it is. And I'm going to import. Are you sure? Yes, I am. So when you import, right, it lives in this screen, and it didn't actually hit your general ledger. Nothing was posted. This is the screen that we're using to go through the transactions line by line and determine what the transactions are. Are they PO payments? Are they office payments? Is anything in question? Do I need to review anything? Do I need to change any item costs, et cetera, et cetera? So here's my first transaction. It's actually a Pottery Barn transaction. So to me, that tells me right away that this would be a PO payment. If I put in my vendor, so as a reminder, it's coming through as a description. Pottery Barn is not entered. Ah. No. Oh, here we go. Let's call it PB. I'm in vendor. Save and select. So my vendor is Pottery Barn. I know that, this was a purchase for an order. And so I want to make sure that I select my vendor prior to hitting this button that says show orders. When I select my vendor and then I hit show orders, it's going to show me if there's any orders available or open for this vendor. In this case, there is not. So let's go into our projects and our items. Where's my Harrison Ford friend? Here he is. Pottery Barn, it's shipping to Harrison Ford's house, of course. Accessory. Base blue. Should always select a room, an item, and a component. Friendly reminder, $1,500. There's my markup. Save and close. Base. I forgot to send Harrison Ford the proposal, so I'm going to create an order. And there it is. Let's refresh my screen. So it actually refreshed my entire screen and it didn't remember my vendor. But if in this scenario, I forgot to put in the vendor as Pottery Barn and I go to show orders, it's actually going to show me orders for every single vendor. So then you can sort in here as another step. And here we are. So it's $1,500. They decided to only charge me, was it 137? And if I hit create entry, just like I would when I'm in money out, whether it be for order payment or office payment, it's automatically going to take this transaction and post it into my general ledger. If you're unsure, like if this is your first time doing mapping, I would not recommend going through and posting 100 items, 100 transactions, and then going into your reconciliation screen and looking something up. I would say try one first, then go into your general ledger, which we'll do, and make sure that it did transfer over correctly and that it does look the way that you want it to look. Even when you're importing, so we're importing cash transactions. So let's say they're all ACH transactions. I do recommend using a unique date. So if you noticed in my, I don't know which one I imported over, but if you notice my check numbers here are unique. So even though they're on the first 6 have to do with the statement date because this was actually an American Express statement. But if this was ACH, I would always do ACH 08 1820. And then I would do a 1. You could actually drag it all the way down, right? So then it would go numerically. The point of doing this, obviously then you could change this to 17, but the point of doing it is to give each transaction a unique check number because you could then filter and search by that check number much easier. So if you had a really busy purchasing day on 7/25, and you went to 4 different stores and charged 15 different things, and then you use the same check number for all of those transactions, if you have any type of question down the road or if you need to reference anything, and you just type in ACH 07 2520 in your general ledger, it'll pull up any activity tied to that check number. And sometimes it is a little bit easier to give everything as much of a unique number as possible. That is my personal preference. So here's my friend Harrison Ford. We wound up overpaying this PO. Why, I have no idea. We'll have to look at it in the item screen later, and I'm going to tell the system to create an entry. I prefer, again, to go in and double check. Accounting, general ledger. We are now in case. Let's go into here. Let's see what happened. So let's go back into our import. Did I not hit post? Let's refresh. Oh, I didn't hit post. Silly me. Are you sure you want to post? Yes, I am. Let's go back in. Let's go into my items screen. Let's refresh it. Here we are. Here's my payment, right? So, and if you think about, if you're familiar with just money out, so where am I in here? Let's just go to money out. If you're in money out, every time you create an entry, your entries under office payments and order payments will then live in this pending screen, right, in section number 4, pending payments. So when you are using the import feature, we bypass that. And as you know, money out, especially on the PO side, can be permanent. There is no deleting of that. You do need to void it. So I would recommend, right, that you do triple check before you go in and post, especially for PO payments. Let's go back into our item. So here's our item. It's now showing overpaid. In theory, right, we should have an order acknowledgement in here. Hopefully it shows that there was freight or something of that $103. You would go in and update other costs, and then the PO would not show overpaid anymore. Okay. So let's go back into our import. So as a reminder, just like when we first logged in, anytime you import data into the import feature, it doesn't go away, right? So it'll live here until you post it. So I so far posted one item out of all of these. Order payments, I think, actually take a little bit longer time. Again, I always recommend triple checking to make sure that that the order you are attempting to close, right, attempting to pay is accurate. Office expenses are actually really easy, right? So my check number's imported, my date imported. So let's assume this was advertising. I don't know, I bought flowers for somebody. And let's pretend that we don't need to add a new vendor. And it's really this one. And it is not related to a client. So this, advertising. So this line item, right, was a lot quicker and easier to attribute to the correct expense account. Again, I'm going to click on this transaction and hit post. Are you sure? Yes, I am. Obviously, you could do them all in one fell swoop as long as you attribute a vendor and an expense account to each line item. Samuels & Sons, as we all know, right, is an order, so you'd have to go in and look through all your orders. Amazon, nope. And like we said before, let's say that something happened in your file. You logged into the wrong credit card. I don't know. You didn't have a good day, and you're like, shoot, you know what? These are all wrong. So delete them all. Oh, there's more than one page even now, but delete them all and start over. So, and actually, I imported already into Chase Visa, which is what you see here. So my Chase business now doesn't have anything, and my Chase Visa is from my import earlier. I may stop there, at least for right now, and take a look at some of the questions. There's quite a bit of questions coming through. Somebody asked if they're in 1.0 and will this information still be relevant? So 1.0 does have a mapping feature. And in my opinion, it is very similar. You do have to obviously map out your file first, then do your import. So you can definitely still utilize this function. You could also reach out to support or maybe even to Sarah and ask when you will be upgraded if you do not know, if you'd prefer to do that. Somebody's asking, how would you suggest importing data from a credit card that is used in 2 software systems? For example, not all charges on our Amex are posted in Studio. Some of them are posted in another software. So we actually have a couple clients, for example, that are larger firms and that use Studio as their purchasing software and run financials through Studio for that, and run design fees and operational expenses through another software. My first recommendation, ideally, would be to make sure that you have more than one credit card and that you're diligent about separating out your expenses. And the way you utilize the cards and the way you charge, because you want to be able to reconcile your card on a monthly basis. And so you're basically going to be doing a lot of manual math to come up with the opening and closing balances. But how would I suggest doing it? If you are in this current situation, export your activity and delete the charges that aren't relevant. But again, that could, I'm not sure how you're running your financials. I'm not sure how you're combining your financial statements. So that may be best discussed offline. Where is the bank import documentation that is mentioned? Michelle, that is a great question. I actually do not know the answer to that, but I'm sure Sarah, I could take your name and Sarah could send you an email with that. Should you import transactions if you already entered them when you made the payment? No, I'm assuming, so if you've gone in and manually, so let's go to money out, right? So if you've gone in and paid PO payments through here, through order payments, or if you're going into the item itself and closing out your order in here this way, no, you would not want to import the information again. So first of all, your PO will show that it's closed. You would have to overpay the PO. So importing works well if you are not, let's say you're not posting payments, I don't want to say up to date, but you're not posting payments in real time. But importing can work, for example, if every Friday you're diligent and you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to import all of my credit card and bank activity for the last week. And you know the last date that you did your last import and you're pulling information, from X date to X date. Or if you say to yourself, weekly is too much for me, but I am going to be diligent about doing it monthly. And you're going in, pulling all of your transactions from your credit card or your bank statement and importing them that way. Why is a check number a required field? Because unfortunately, if you still get audited, and audits do happen, every day, that will be relevant. So if you feel like it's optional, by all means, you do not have to use it. My recommendation and my experience is that it absolutely helps you down the road if there's ever a question. When it comes to order payments too, right? There's reports that are generated off of obviously project worksheets, payment application reports, if you're trying to look information by vendor, and check numbers are a part of that report. So I am a big believer in having accurate and up-to-date financials. So the check number, in my opinion, is relevant. So Keith asked a great question. Can you import bank credit card statements from a PDF? So no. They actually serve 2 different functions. So you should be importing from a CSV only. And I'm sorry, I think at the beginning of the webinar I said Excel, but it does need to be a CSV file only. Once you import, then you use your PDF statement to reconcile. And right, your PDF statement has your opening and closing balance. And you're confirming that all of the information that you used in your import ties back into your bank or credit card statement. If the amount that hit the card does not match the order you are applying to, will it notify or let you know? Or will it just be an over or under payment? So it will not let you know, and it will just be an over or under payment. You could catch that in a number of different reports. You could actually find it in your item screen as well. If you're looking at your project reports, like on a weekly basis, right, you'll see that an item is over or underpaid. But no, there is no, there's nothing in the system that will alert you of that. So Molly is asking that she's usually posting payments as she's writing the checks in real time. So Molly, that's actually great. I mean, that's a great practice. I think a lot of people, right, should be adapting that practice, and unfortunately, that's not always the case. So yes, the bank import for your checking account, for example, may not be applicable to you, but your credit card charges may. Again, you may be good at posting them in real time, right, order by order, or you may find that it's easier, for example, to do what I just mentioned and pull your credit card activity weekly and close out PO payments that way. Maybe it will save you some time. Can you import daily? You can. So you have to be really careful with daily activity. You definitely do not want to import anything that is pending. And usually your credit card and your bank statement and your financial institutions will identify pending charges. And because pending charges can, right, they could live as pending and then go away, or live as pending and then the number can change. I would say importing daily actually too, is that the best use of your time, right? If you evaluated your 40 hours in a week, should you really be doing it daily, or should you be setting aside a day, or maybe even 2 days, to work on your financials? And this would be part of like a weekly system. Pamela's asking if there's a way to view the information in one line. Actually, that's a great question, Pamela. I don't believe so. I could definitely double check with someone on our end. This screen does look, for those of you who have used 1.0 and the import feature in 1.0, this screen does look a little different. But I don't believe at the moment there's any way to change things around. Hillary's asking if I retype my credit card charges. So no, I don't retype anything. I log into my financial institution. So let's use Amex as an example. And financial institutions usually have an option to download a statement or to download activity in an Excel or a CSV file. So that is where I can anything manually. And in that same download screen, you could usually select a date range, you could select a statement period. So, and if you have questions on that, right, all financial institutions are different. So you would definitely want to reach out to whoever you're using for your banking needs. Catherine is asking, if the owner has a personal payment on the business account, what expense account do I use? So this is a great question. And it would definitely depend on what type of entity you are. And because this does have tax repercussions, but typically it would be a distribution or a draw account. So the main two accounts that you would use. And it is a great way, right, to make that process quicker, to put all of those personal charges through the mapping import than to go into one by one and enter them. On the checking account import, can you mark check as cleared? So I do not believe so. And that would actually defeat the purpose of the reconciliation. So again, as a reminder, the import is the precursor to your reconciliation screen. So they serve two different purposes, right? So the import is just helping the debits and the credits come into your general ledger, whether it be for your cash or your credit card accounts. And then your reconciliation screen is making sure that all of the transactions on your statement for either credit or cash are recorded in your general ledger. So it's a great double check. I would definitely, I would suggest that you don't bypass the reconciliation because you're like in your head, oh, I used the import feature, I know I didn't miss anything. Excuse me. So Lisa has a great question. Can you upload into the data file somewhere a copy of the receipts, copy of the invoices? So let me just make sure. that I'm understanding that correctly. So as we all know, right, we can upload into our items, but are you asking if I can attach an image into my office expenses? Hold on one second, Lisa, I'm just trying to find you. Oh, I think Lisa, actually you muted yourself. So the answer to that at the moment is no. So there is no. Oh, Lisa, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. So was that what you're asking? If you could attach a copy, for example, like in the Amex website, right? You could attach a copy of your receipt to your to the transaction.
Yes, or just, even office payment, anything. I know I use QuickBooks Online a lot, and we can upload and attach into the ledger any actual invoice or receipt to a transaction. And we can upload like a copy of the bank statement and attach it into the online data file. But I just was trying to see if this software actually allowed that. I don't
Yeah.
know that it
I've gotten that question a lot. I think Sarah can confirm, but I do not believe so. I do think that is on their radar because it would definitely be helpful for things such as reimbursables for when you do billings. And obviously there's some clients, like some of your clients will require receipts for reimbursables, and it would obviously be easier to just go to Studio as your resource. So we could double check with Sarah, but my understanding as of right now, the answer to that is no.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, that's definitely a great question. And when it comes to reimbursables, it comes up often where, especially firms and like larger firms that are sending reimbursable receipts often and with big dollar values are still having to save those digital receipts somewhere and submitting them to their clients. So I do know the last time I had checked in on that, it's definitely in the works. Can you show how to attribute to an office expense? Oh, sure. Sorry, I thought we had done the advertising example, but sure. Let's go into, so I'm in Chase and I have some things already uploaded. And so here's my Amazon charge. And I know that this charge was for office expenses. It was for office supplies. Amazon is not a vendor, so I'm going to add it, Amazon vendor, save and select. And I know that it was office expense. I don't need to put a related client. Here's my check date. Here's my check number. I'm going to select my little box here and post. So, and this is Chase Visa. Are you sure I'm going to post? Yes. And let's just go and double check, right? Like, especially if you're doing this for the first time, I recommend doing that. Go into your general ledger. Go into Chase Visa. Get rid of Pottery Barn. And here's my Amazon for $19.48. Here's my vendor Amazon. Here's my check number. Here's my description. Here's my date. As a friendly reminder, right? So this is a credit card. So your credit cards, expenses that you use the credit cards for will always come into here as a credit. So this is correct, even though it's showing a negative number. So this is not a refund that you received from Amazon. This is really a payment that you made to Amazon, and it was $19.48. So I'm sorry, I don't remember who asked that question. Oh, Jennifer. So yeah, Jennifer, let me know if that is clear. I think actually office expenses are easier to post in the mapping, right? There's just less boxes to go through, less things to look at. And like I had mentioned, when you're in this screen, you don't have to do them one by one, right? You can go in and look, here's another Amazon. It's actually a payment. Here's FedEx's, right? Like here's another Amazon. So I could post two Amazons at the same time because I know that they were both office expenses. I didn't need to go look that up. Amazon. Must have really liked Amazon that day. Office expense. Two, let's just make sure they're both selected. And I hit post and they should both fall off this list. And there they go. Now they're gone. So someone is saying that the screen can be complicated if they're downloading 500 Amex charges a week. And if that is the type of firm that you work with, so then yes, you would be a good candidate for doing a download maybe twice a week, or figuring out too, like if you wanted to, in your CSV file, separating out office expenses versus PO expenses, that may be a good way for you to perhaps break up the work. Hillary had asked, do you recommend starting this process in the new year or now? Actually, you could do it at any time. Yeah, so as long as you're not duplicating your expenses, like as long as you're not duplicating the information that you're importing, then by all means, start on Monday. So, or we're approaching the end of the month, right? So reconcile September and then say to yourself, okay, come October, I'm going to download my transactions every Thursday, or I'm going to download them every Monday, Thursday. And then I'm going to reconcile at the end of the month. Definitely try it out, see how it works for you. Keith is asking, we are scheduled for the upgrade this Sunday. Should I wait to implement the bank importing? Yes, definitely, definitely wait. Again, it'll be a little bit different. So, and especially if it's just this Sunday, definitely wait, log in on Monday, review all your financials, and then work on the bank import. That's actually a really great question. Nina has a good question. I mean, it's not quite related to bank imports, but is there a way to convert accrual to cash manually? So yes, you'd have to pull your balance sheet and your P&L, and you'd have to convert it manually. So does the import show? How does it show a credit? So again, debits and credits, right? That term itself can be a little bit confusing. But if you have a refund, it depends on how your import is coming through. And it depends on your financial institution. So if we look at my file, right? My activity is coming through as positive numbers, even though in my general ledger, when we looked, right, it's coming through as a negative number. Because of the way my financial institution works, if I have a negative number in this CSV file, that will come through as a refund. So that will come through whether it be a refund to an office expense or a refund to a PO. Nina is asking, get a deposit report to see what was actually received. Nina, I mean, that could be a deep dive. I mean, in theory, you could look at your client and vendor deposits and go from there, but you'd really have to assume that your WIP is up to date, your AR is accurate, your AP is accurate, and your client and vendor deposits are accurate. So I'm happy to talk with you afterwards if you'd like. I think my contact information was shared somewhere. But yes, the system does automatically convert you to accrual because the design world does have WIP, which is work in process. Molly has a great question. Yes, work and personal expenses are commingled. So you could tackle that two different ways. So the question is, I use one credit card for both personal and work expenses. And what do I do in terms of the reconciliation and accounting for the payment that's made towards the personal expenses? And then obviously there's the business expenses and the payment on the business card. So part of that would be, or where you should start with is, what have you done in the past? What does your liability reflect on your balance sheet? Does your liability reflect the personal expenses, or are they omitted altogether? If they are omitted altogether and the liability on your balance sheet is just the business liability, then yes, don't import the personal expenses. Don't account for the personal payment. But that's also assuming that you're paying everything, right, sort of in full every month. If you have revolving balances, that may get a little bit tricky. What would you do with interest and bank charges, that type of thing? If you'd like, we could definitely talk about it further. Feel free to send me an email and I could log in and take a look. So the payment appears as a negative 13,000. So yes, the payment is the same as any refund, right? So the payment, let's go find it. Where did it go? So the payment right here is $13,000. So the expense account in this scenario, just like in money out, right? When you go to money out and you want to pay your credit card, your expense account is actually your credit card. So it is Chase Visa. My vendor is Chase. And this is doing the opposite of what this is doing. This positive $61, and I don't know what is this for, so it's for fabric. So this positive $61 is satisfying a PO and increasing my liability, right? So increasing how much money I owe to Chase. This is doing the opposite. This is decreasing how much money I owe to Chase right here, and obviously I'm paying Chase. So let's go ahead actually and post it, and then we'll go into our general ledger and take a look at it. So here we are. So so all of these are charges that we had. Why it came through twice right here, actually I have no idea. This is the one that's correct. This one is incorrect. So this is a debit because it's decreasing how much money you owe to Chase. Why it came through twice, I don't know. Actually, I think that was user error. It had to be. Oh, because I selected Chase and Chase. Because I am silly. Let's use the polite word. So this credit is actually should be coming out of cash. So I didn't pay it out of my my Chase Visa. I paid it out of my Chase business checking. I had a senior moment and I forgot. Oops, the change. But that was definitely user error. Hold on, make sure I could correct it. Save. Back. And now it's only in here one time and it is a debit. Again, what I would say is, first of all, test out a bank import, right? Make sure that it is hitting the debits and credits correctly. I always resort to my general ledger as a double check. And then when I'm done, so let's say it's not the end of the month, it's the middle of the month, and I'm like, shoot, I imported a lot of transactions. I don't know, let me just go in here and let me see if something catches my eye, right? And that was me, I made that mistake. So this is reducing how much money I owe to Chase. Is it best to post a credit card payment as part of a bank download? Angela, obviously that's a great question because I just did it wrong. So I think the answer could be maybe, right? It depends on how, can you do it? Sure, absolutely. Obviously, please select the right account. But do you utilize your cash balance in Studio? Like, do you have a live cash balance? Do you log into Studio and go into money out to determine how much money you have? If the answer to that is yes, and you have a large, you have a large monthly bill every month and that you pay it, but you're not doing your import. Let's say you're doing your import monthly, and there's a lag, right? Well, then using the import screen for your payments wouldn't be beneficial to you, right? Because you're going to be a week behind in your cash balance. So then how do you make financial decisions to say, should I pay these POs or should I wait? Do I have enough money for payroll or do I not? So I think in theory, the answer is yes, absolutely use it. But it depends on how much or how little maybe you're utilizing Studio and your general ledger and your financial reports. What if you import activity to the wrong account? That is a great question. So let's assume you import activity in this screen, and I have more than one credit card in here for sure. So there's a Wells Fargo and a Chase. So let's say I accidentally brought in my Wells Fargo into my Chase. My recommendation would be, hopefully you realize it before you post, but go in, select all of the transactions, and delete. Again, as a reminder, they live in this screen, right? They will live in this screen just like in money out, like all of those pending payments live in that pending world until you do something with them, whether you delete them or post them. Same thing in here. So if you realize you've made a mistake, if you realize again, right, it's to the wrong account, you used the wrong year, something, go in and delete them and do your bank import again. Listen, it's definitely happened to me. That was a great question. Oh, Molly, yes, always paid in full and paid from personal. So then I would say yes, omit it. So if your liability, right, so you do need to start with your liability balance. So if you're looking at your credit card statement, right, and your liability balance on that statement includes your personal expenses, but you know in your reconciliation screen in Studio and on your balance sheet in Studio, it does not, then yes, don't post them and don't post your payment. Can you? You can, but right, it goes back to the same thing. You'll be creating a little bit more work, right, because you're going to be posting all the transactions to drawer distributions, and you're going to be posting that payment from drawer distributions. I would say whichever way you go with, right, just be consistent and then make sure again that your liability balance on your balance sheet ties to your credit card statement. So that's it's definitely a really great question. Okay. Let's see. So we have time for a couple more questions. Why is a vendor required on the import mapping? So just like in money out, so think of the mapping just like you would enter or utilize the money out screen. So right, so if you're in money out, we're actually in orders, but let's go to money out. And let's go to order payments. In this screen, right, you still need to select a vendor. If you're in your office payments, same thing, right? You still need to select a vendor. Every transaction is tied to a vendor. You cannot continue posting a financial transaction outside of a journal entry without selecting a vendor. You can also pull reports by vendor, right? So sometimes, for example, like in office expenses, some office expenses for clients can be a catch-all. You know, they could be $100,000 in office expenses. And let's say you then want to narrow that down and say, okay, shoot, why are my office expenses $100,000? Let me dive into office expenses and filter them by vendor. But the system actually won't even allow you to move forward without a vendor. So we recommend sometimes taking some shortcuts. For example, do you really need to enter every restaurant? Maybe not, right? I think we talked about this in the webinar for money out. You could use generic vendor called restaurant. We do that usually with restaurant and gas, but that's about the extent of it. But yes, unfortunately, you are required a vendor. Well, let me see. Oh, and I'm sorry, Lisa. So what should you select? So in the import screen, let's just go back to the import screen 1 second. This is coming through with a description, right? This is the description. So this isn't the vendor. So the vendor should be set up by vendor ID. So this is FedEx, right? That's just coming through as a description. So the vendor should be FedEx. But the description, as we all know, right, when we download any type of CSV file, like look at this Amazon description, right? You don't want that as your vendor ID. Amazon will just suffice. Same thing with FedEx, right? Like, so again, this is your description and your vendor ID should hopefully just be FedEx. Lisa, hopefully I answered your question. Okay, well, let's see. Oh, sorry, there. Can you use the import instead of money out? You can, sure, absolutely. And I think this question's been asked sort of a number of different ways. You could use it in conjunction with money out, or you could use it replace of, but you will have to be mindful that you are not duplicating your efforts, right? So if you're someone who utilizes money out, let's say daily, because you print checks and you log into Studio every day to look at your cash balance to say, you know, I have $10,000 in the bank. and these are my orders that need to be paid. Then the import screen may not work for you because your general ledger is up to date in real time almost every day, right? You may be able to use your general ledger for your credit cards, but maybe not your cash, because again, you utilize the general ledger and your balance sheet in Studio very actively. So it could work together, or it could work standalone, and hopefully I answered that question. Lisa, great question about accounts payable. So Lisa's question is, Studio doesn't necessarily have a traditional accounts payable feature. So no, 2.0 won't look any different. Is there a way to enter AP? So the only way that AP pops up on your balance sheet in Studio is through items and is through invoiced items, right? So if you have a PO and you pay the PO, that does not go on AP. That lives in vendor deposits. It converts to AP once you invoice. So there is not a traditional accounts payable system in Studio. We do have firms who handle that in a number of different ways. I think probably best to connect either after the session or schedule a separate time to discuss it, because there are really large million dollar firms that utilize Studio, and we do create workarounds. Does the prefix office payment disappear? Oh, you're welcome, Lisa. Sorry, I know that was probably not the answer you wanted. Does the prefix office payment disappear from the description? So my description, though, doesn't say office payment, right? So my description here says, Fabrics, FedEx. The description for the payment itself, when I made the auto payment, came through as auto payment. When you're in money out and you go to in here, when you are making an office payment in here, let's just say I'm paying first dibs. I'm going to print the check, and yeah, I'm paying first dibs to advertise for something. This says office payment. No, this description never goes away unless you manually change it, right? So I like having some detail, especially in our bigger firms where the detail matters because we're evaluating expenses quite often. So I like that to say advertising, or Q1 magazine subscription, or tickets for parking outside the required time zone. I personally like as much detail as I can, right? Without overkill, obviously, but that will provide me information down the road, right? The description populates on your general ledger reports, so it populates on your financial reports. And then if you're looking at that 3 years later and you're like, shoot, why was my travel so high? And something in the description jogs your memory, I think there's value to that. So yes, and your description in the import will be generated. So hold on one second, will be generated from this, right? For me, it's generated from this column. And again, this description is coming directly from my financial institution. Christine is asking if you could import vendors from a CSV file. You can import vendors into 2.0, and I don't know if you migrated from 1.0 or if you're trying to convert from a different software. I do know that there's documentation on that in the support function of your 2.0 support box, like when you log in. I'm sure Sarah actually could give you more information about that as well. I think just maybe one or two more questions, as we're almost at the way we're almost at the 2 o'clock hour my time. So Angela's saying my import did not come across the way this looks. So again, your import and your import mapping. So this spreadsheet right here, this is coming from my financial institution. So everyone's financial institution will look different, right? Your export from your financial institution will look different. You will need to manipulate that CSV file first of all, to your liking, and then second of all, to logically make sense in the mapping window. So the first screen that we went to, right? So we were in accounting and bank import mapping. The mapping comes from a formatted CSV file. So you don't have to make it look the way I made it look, right? Again, this came from my financial institution, and I formatted my future mapping to look this way because I know how it's going to come out of, for example, American Express or Chase. So hopefully that, I think that was Angela, that answered your question. If you do have help, if you do need help on an individual basis, again, always feel free to reach out to me. But again, definitely start with an export from your financial institution. See what that looks like first, then attempt to do the mapping. If you don't like the mapping that you did, or if you did it and then it doesn't work, delete it and start over, right? It's not permanent. Oh, okay. Sounds like a plan. Sarah, do you know when the webinar will go out for those users that were registered, right? It usually takes a couple of days, I think.
Yeah, everyone on the call today will get an email about approximately 24 hours after the session today of the recording.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like the mapping feature, well, the import feature. I do think it works well. It works well for a lot of our clients. You do need to make sure you have a system for it, and that you're just, you're doing it to speed up your efficient, right? To make sure that you're being efficient and utilizing your time the best. If you're sitting there every week and going through a export from your financial institution and you're like, shoot, I posted this, this, and this, and this, and I'm only importing 2 transactions, then the import probably doesn't make sense for you, right? You're doing everything in real time as you work through your project worksheets or as you're closing out your POs. So, but definitely give it a try. It is fairly streamlined and it is fairly easy to set up, and it may really save you some time. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining as always. It's coming up to the end of the year, so I'm sure we'll be connecting regarding some year-end wrap up and maybe some tax planning. So hope everyone has a great weekend. Oh, thank you, Sarah. You too.
All right, take care. Thank you all for joining on the call today as well. To reach Julia, we have her information listed. Her email is julia@newagefinancialconsulting.com, her phone number, and she has a website. And to reach out to Studio's internal free support department, their email is support@studiodesigner.com.